Happy Monday, everyone. Yeah, it's a happy Monday. It's beautiful outside. And it's Monday, everyone's favorite day of the week. There was a lot going on this weekend. High school championships, NASCAR Cup Series. We have an NHL Finals matchup. The Stanley Cup Final beginning later this week. The NBA Finals beginning later on this week as well, as those series are going to be getting underway. Also, I don't know if you guys have been paying attention to the WNBA. I have. And there's a lot of stories coming out of the WNBA about the treatment of Caitlin Clark and how the opposing players are treating the new number one overall pick. There were some videos of some hard fouls on Clark from this past game. Kennedy Carter getting into the spotlight. I have a few thoughts on that. We'll get to that as well. Also, this is something that goes on, and it's just, it happens in the background a lot of times, but it's in the forefront here now. The men's Division I baseball playoffs, the College World Series, the regionals going on, super regionals coming up shortly. There's actually a game going on right now. It is to find out who's going to be playing against Clemson in the super regionals. Oklahoma State, Florida, a 1-3 going at it. They are in the top of the sixth inning with Florida up 3-2 over Oklahoma State. UNC, Chapel Hill, is actually still in the College Baseball World Series. They have the final game of their regional round against LSU. The winner moves on to face West Virginia. North Carolina, well, they go into their bracket as the 1 seed. They lose their third game, unfortunately, which put them into the elimination bracket. It is a double elimination bracket, so you still have a chance if you lose. And then it goes to a best of 3 series, and then it goes back to double elimination, and then it goes back to a best of 3. A little confusing, if you don't ask me. I've always had a problem with the way the College Baseball World Series plays because, can't we just have a little bit easier thing to follow instead of double elimination versus best of 3? It's kind of the same thing, but when you put it into a group, it's like round robin play, and it's just, I don't like it. I know it's always been that way. People love tradition, but I don't love tradition. I think we need to change things that need to be changed, as you've probably been able to tell over the year or so that we've been hanging out here on WSIC. Things need to change, and they should change for the better. I'm not going to go on too much about college baseball and the College World Series and how it's run. It's a long tournament. Super regionals, like I said, are going to be coming up. Then it's the College World Series, and then it is the College World Series final. A lot of different ways to look at this. Also, softball is going on as well, so just something to keep in mind as you go through your week, figuring out what sports you want to watch. I know things wind down here in the spring into the summer. You're going to have the Olympics coming up. Also, NASCAR is going to be going on. We're going to be able to lean heavy into the MLB. Some stories coming from the MLB, the Orioles in the conversation right now as they've brought up Connor Norby, who is their number 6 prospect to the MLB. And this is a young team who has brought up their prospects in the past couple of years, and they're still bringing up more highly touted prospects. The Orioles are becoming one of the best teams in the MLB when you look at the regular season standings throughout the league. No reason to think that the Orioles aren't going to be a force to be reckoned with come October. But before we get to any of that, we have to keep you updated on what happened on Friday and Saturday in the world of high school athletics. It was the final weekend for high school championships. There are no more everybody's preparing for the fall now. We're going to have, obviously, football coming up, so we'll cover that then. We got some dead periods coming where we can't have any practices, workouts, anything like that. That's throughout a couple of weeks in July. But this was the last week of games. Starting with Friday, the 4A Women's Soccer Championship was played. Marvin Ridge, the Mavericks, picked up the program's second women's soccer championship and ended Ashley's undefeated season, Ashley High School that is, at the Mecklenburg County Sportsplex on Friday night. Marvin Ridge claiming the victory 2-1. They took the lead just before halftime when Lucy Chin scored on an assist from Cameron McKee in the 38th minute. The game was tied by the Screaming Eagles in the 48th minute, and then late in the game, Marvin Ridge was able to come through. And they got their second women's championship, so congratulations to Marvin Ridge. Also, that other things that happened on Friday, a lot of game ones in baseball and softball. Now, no championships were handed out on those series until Saturday. We did have a game 3 that was played, but a lot of these series ended in 2. Sweep, clean sweep, a 2-game sweep, not, anything crazy like a 4-game sweep, but still a sweep nonetheless to win a state championship. So let's start with the women's soccer scene. We'll continue on with that, going in order of how these games were played. The 1A title for women's soccer was taken by Christ the King High School. That is their third consecutive 1A state title in women's soccer, as they were able to beat Woods Charter High School 5-0 on Saturday. It's interesting. This is the third year in a row that Woods Charter has lost to Christ the King. 3-0 and 0-3. It's pretty interesting, if you ask me. So congratulations to Christ the King High School. Also, Jacksonville topping South Point High School in penalty kicks for the 3A championship. It was after 110 scoreless minutes, so 0-0, 0-0 going into that penalty shootout. Jacksonville coming out on top 3-2 to take their state championship. Pine Lake Prep was the 1 seed in the 2A state championship game. Unfortunately for Pine Lake, they were outlasted by Seaforth Hawks. Seaforth High School getting a state championship in women's soccer. It is the first state championship for women's soccer in Seaforth High School's history. 0-0 heading into a penalty shootout like a couple of others we talked about. Seaforth ends up getting the win in 6 rounds of penalties. I'm sorry, 7 rounds of penalty. 9. Where am I seeing this? 9 rounds of penalties. They won 6-5. What a shootout it was. Don't go anywhere. We have a lot more state championship games to talk about. You are listening to The Scoreboard, and we're back after this.
Joe Berg on 105.9 100.7 WSIC.
And welcome back. We are here listening. You're listening to the Scoreboard. 844 Studio 4. That's 844-788-3464. Call me up if you have something you want to talk about. We're going over the high school state championship games that were going on Friday and Saturday. Women's soccer, baseball, softball, all taking place. Our soccer state champions, Christ the King, Seaforth, Jacksonville, and Marvin Ridge. Congratulations to all of those high schools on your state championships for women's soccer. Moving on to baseball and softball, let's go ahead and start with the softball championships. In the 1A, the Cardinals of East Wilkes are your state champions after losing game number 1 on Friday, 3-0. A wonderful comeback for East Wilkes High School. They won game 2, 7-5, and game 3 was very decisive, including a 7-run inning, 9-3 over Northside Pinetown. So the Cardinals complete the comeback. East Wilkes to take a state title. In the 2A bracket, Southwest Randolph gets the championship. Congratulations to them. A walk-off win in game number 2 to sweep Midway High School. Southwest Randolph won game number 1 decisively, 13-0. Game 2 was a lot closer, but in the end, the walk-off win for Southwestern Randolph gives them the 3-2 win and the state title in the 2A championship. The 3A championship was between South Brunswick and Kings Mountain. This was a very low-scoring series. 2 very close games. Yes, it only went 2 games. It did not go the full length. South Brunswick High School beats Kings Mountain High School 2-0 and 2-1 for a 2-0 series sweep. A couple of very close games in the 3A softball bracket. And in 4A, unfortunately, this one wasn't as close than it was at all. Gardner High School, 3, Weddington 1 in game number 1. And in game number 2, Gardner High School ends it in 5 innings with a 12-1 victory, earning the sweep and the championship in the 4A bracket. Congratulations to Gardner High School and everybody who ended up winning a state championship in softball over the weekend. And like you heard, only one of those series went 3 games, and the one that did, that team lost game 1. So very interesting to see how these championship games go down. In the baseball world, starting with the 1A championship, Uwharrie Charter goes back-to-back as 1A champions. They got a win 2-1 against Northside Pinetown in 8 innings in game number 1 and a very decisive game 2 with a 6-1 victory. So Uwharrie Charter gets back-to-back state championships in the 1A brackets. The 2A champion was Green Central. It was their 6th NCHSA baseball title as they beat Burns High School 2-0 in game 1 and 8-5 in game number 2. A very decisive win there. So the Bulldogs, they finished their year 31-3. It is the 9th time that Green Central has played for a state championship, and it is the 6th time that they have won it. Their ace, Brandon Burris, threw a complete game in game number 2. five runs, 11 hits, 2 strikeouts. He also scored 2 runs, by the way, in a 2-for-4 at bat. And he was named the most valuable player of the series. So congratulations to Braden Burris and Green Central High School, the 2A state champions. In the 3A brackets, it was East Rowan taking on South Central High School. East Rowan with the sweep for the 3A championship. Game number 1 was 2-2 until the bottom of the 9th inning after a double from Brandon Sheave and an intentional walk to Cobb Hightower loaded the bases, allowing Harrison Alshri. I probably did not pronounce that right, but I tried my best. Harrison, if you're listening, I'm sorry, buddy. But you drew a walk to seal the win. A walk-off walk in Game 1 gave East Rowan the 3-2 win in the bottom of the 9th. And in Game number 2, East Rowan piled on. 11-3 was the final score. So the sweep goes to East Rowan in the 3A state championship as well. In 4A competition, it was TC Robertson taking on Ashley High School. Ashley High School having a great year in baseball and in softball, as well as Northside Pinetown in the 1A brackets. But TC Robertson was the repeat champion in the 4A NCHSAA championship. They beat Ashley High School 3-0 in game number 1, and they handled them pretty easily in game number 2, 8-1, the victory in that one. So TC Robertson, the Rams, repeat as state champions in the 4A bracket. A big congratulations to all of our high school athletes this year. I'm sure there's plenty of them who are going to be moving on to compete in some level of collegiate sport, whether it's Division 1, Division 2, Division 3, NAIA, JUCO. I'm sure there's a lot of them out there. So congratulations to everyone who participated in these state championship games as well. It's not easy to get there, but a big congratulations going to all of our winners in the spring this year. And that wraps it up. No more high school sports going on until the fall. Everybody's graduating now. So teams will be different next year. Everything will be different. But the coverage will remain the same right here on the Scoreboard, WSIC. We're going to have all the information that you need on your high school athletics. If you know someone who is playing, or if you want to shout out a certain school or let me know something that maybe I didn't know, give us a call, 844-STUDIO-4, and keep me informed. Let me know. I can't see it all. Try my best, but, I can't see everything. So let me know if you saw something that was on your mind. Moving on from the high school scene, I want to get into a couple of stories here. A breaking news story from 30 minutes ago. I haven't even really had time to look into it, but Padres infielder is facing potential lifetime ban for betting on baseball after Major League Baseball received information that he wagered on games involving the Pittsburgh Pirate when he was with the team last season. That's Tucupita Marchano. I don't watch much Padres baseball, but I'm trying my best with these names. I'm not the best name pronunciation guy if you haven't been able to figure that one out. But Marchano, however you want to pronounce it, facing a potential lifetime ban, only 24 years old. He is yet to be formally penalized, but the MLB has received some information about this. He tore his ACL last year, and while he was on the injured list, allegedly placed the bets, which were flagged by a sports book and reported to a league. Man, it's tough. You see these stories happen. It happened in the NBA recently. A lifetime ban for Jonte Porter for disclosing confidential information, limiting his participation in at least one game and betting on NBA games while playing in the G League. This is no different what's going on in the MLB. Even if you're on the injured list, even if you're hurt, even if you're not playing, but you're part of the organization, a player in the organization, You cannot bet on baseball. You can bet on whatever else you want, but you cannot bet on baseball. It is that simple. And I don't know how these players in the MLB, NBA don't realize they're doing it. Maybe the thought process is, oh, I'm hurt. It doesn't matter. I can bet on the game. No, you have inside information. You are on the inside. You cannot bet on something like that. You are playing in the games. You are part of the franchise. You just can't do it. And it's sad to see because a lot of these players are young and they're getting banned from their leagues. Jonte Porter recently, we talked about it a couple of months ago. He was banned from the NBA. Probably thought, I don't play much. Nobody will notice if I bet 10K on my under for minutes. Yeah, somebody's going to notice that. Jonte Porter, nobody's betting on you. If there's all of a sudden $10,000 bet thrown your way, man, yeah, that's going to get flagged. Tucapita, what are you doing, bud? You play baseball. Why are you betting on baseball? You're right there. We got more stories from the world of sports on the other side of this break. We're going to get into NASCAR. A very entertaining race, question mark, on something that wasn't a cookie cutter mile and a half. Whoa! No waiver for Kyle Larson? What? Don't go anywhere. We'll talk about that on the other side of the break. You're listening to The Scoreboard. Back after this.
Keep it right here. We'll have more.
And we're back here on the scoreboard. 844 Studio 4 is the phone number. If you have something you'd like to talk about, you can talk about it here. You got something you need to vent about? I know a lot of you have opinions on NASCAR because NASCAR is so big in this area. And no, that was not sarcasm. It is pretty big. And here's the thing about NASCAR is it's getting bigger again. The Coca-Cola 600 sold out, packed. Now, sometimes they say it's sold out and you look at the stands and it's like, are you sure about that? No, the Coca-Cola 600 was definitely sold out. Gateway, Worldwide Technology Raceway, St. Louis, whatever you want to call it. They said it was a sellout. Back-to-back sellouts for NASCAR? Now, granted, there were some empty seats to be seen when you really look at it, but all the tickets were sold. Probably, resale tickets that were never sold. So NASCAR, hey, the attendance looking good. And when something like this happens at a race that is attended highly, you make a lot of new fans, maybe some lifelong fans as well, as it was a very dramatic end to the Enjoy Illinois 300. Austin Cindric, Penske, the 2-car, no longer the Blue Deuce, but the 2-car, getting it done. Austin Cindric with his second career win punches his ticket to the playoffs. Yeah, I said he punched his ticket to the playoffs. Isn't that interesting to say with playoffs and things like that? We'll talk about playoffs a little bit later on. I got a lot to say about this. Listen, the rest of this show is mostly going to be NASCAR, and then we're going to talk some hockey at the end. I got some things I got to say about hockey, okay? Denny Hamlin is your points leader right now. Kyle Larson, second in points. Chase Elliott has jumped up to third as Martin Truex Jr. falls down to fourth. And fifth place, snugged in real good there, is William Byron. The results from this weekend's race at the Enjoy Illinois 300, Austin Cindric, your winner. Denny Hamlin finishing second. Brad Keselowski, who's had a really good stretch over the past 3 weeks, finishes third. Tyler Reddick, fourth, and Joey Logano rounding out the top five. Joey Logano, a driver who has a history of success at this racetrack. Austin Dillon with a sixth place finish. Christopher Bell places seventh. Rookie Carson Hocevar, eighth. Justin Haley, ninth. And Kyle Larson, NASCAR's Golden Boy, finishes 10th. Yes, NASCAR's Golden Boy. You heard me correctly. Even though he, I don't know whose fault it was. Him and Kyle Busch tangling in turns 1 and 2. Yeah, Kyle kind of came down on him. The 5, Larson, he drove it in way too deep. Didn't stick, got loose. Unfortunately, Kyle Busch got the worst of that and wasn't able to continue. Kyle Larson, on the other hand, man, he wrecks the car and finishes 10th. Who would have thought, right? So the end of this race was very interesting. It was green for most of the race, actually. There weren't many cautions in this one, including in that final stage. But green flag pit stops began with approximately 65 laps to go, 64 laps to go, somewhere in there. And Ryan Blaney was the first on to pit road. Well, after the pit cycle, Ryan Blaney was your leader, and the laps continued to wind down. Cindric stayed fairly close to the 12 of Blaney, but he wasn't able to catch him, wasn't able to do anything. The 20 car of Christopher Bell ran down Blaney and then started having engine problems, which is why he ended up finishing all the way back in 7th. He had probably the fastest car of the afternoon. Well, 10 to go, 5 to go. All of a sudden, coming to the white flag, Daniel Suarez gets back around the 12 car in 3 and 4. And then down the front stretch, Austin Cindric just got out of line, and all of a sudden we saw the 12 car not going full speed. Turns out he ran out of gas. That was not supposed to happen. The fuel window was estimated to be 70 laps. He pit with about 64 laps to go. Most likely, they did not get the tank full. They did not get it as full as they could. And because of that, Ryan Blaney runs out of gas on the final lap. That's tough. That's a tough way for the race to end. Final lap and you run out of gas. You see the white flag in front of you. Usually the white flag is the one you want to see because when you take the white flag, next flag ends the race, whether they pile it up on the back stretch or you get back around to the checkers. This time he was a lap short. He really wanted that flag to be the checker flag, even though I'm pretty sure Cindric got around him by the time they got to the line. But Blaney wouldn't have finished where he did. Ryan Blaney leading on the white flag lap, finishes last on the lead lap, 24th. 25th was your pole sitter, Michael McDowell, who had a really rough day. Poor guy, man. They had a fast race car, put it on the pole for the first time at a non-speedway track. Some bad strategy, some bad restarts. Ended up having to play strategy, and they didn't get the luck that they needed to have the run they wanted to have. Unfortunate for Michael McDowell. As of today, there is no word on a waiver for Kyle Larson. Now, there is some information that I have for you on this. Jeff Gluck, writer for NASCAR for The Athletic. He covers motorsports for The Athletic. Tweeted out earlier today that NASCAR has put out the points report after the race, after Worldwide Technology, after Gateway. Kyle Larson is listed second in points, but is now shown with 0 playoff points. Last week, he was shown with 17 playoff points after the Coca-Cola 600. Like I said, there's no word on a waiver for Kyle Larson. We're over a week in now. The 600 was on Sunday. Today is Monday. We're a week and a day in. And I have a lot of thoughts on this. Number one, should NASCAR be giving Kyle Larson a waiver? Yes and no. In my opinion, the answer is yes and no. Will they give Larson a waiver? They're going to let it drag on a little bit. But yes, I do think they're going to grant it to him. Here's the thing. Once you set a precedent, you really can't change it unless you change the rules in the offseason. NASCAR is, famous for their making it up as they go along. And a lot of times it feels that way. But this is something that hasn't really been made up, but it has been made up at the same time. I know it's a little confusing, but follow me. When we went to the playoff system, NASCAR announced that you must race all 26 regular season races and every race in the playoffs to be eligible for the championship at the end of the season. There were going to be exceptions to that rule in terms of playoff waivers. Now, the original intention of waivers was for anybody who was injured to be able to come back and still challenge for the playoffs and possibly the championship. Most famously, Kyle Busch, 2015. He got hurt at Daytona in the Xfinity race. He missed quite a few weeks. He won 3 races in the regular season, made the playoffs, and eventually went on to win his first championship that year. They have gone so far away from the original intention of this that they can't just now in the middle of the season say, you know what, we're drawing a line in the stand here. And no, Kyle, you're not getting a playoff waiver. I have a lot of thoughts on this. We're going to come back here after this commercial break and continue the conversation about Kyle Larson and the playoffs and should he or should he not get a waiver to allow him to make the playoffs. We'll be back. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to the Scoreboard here on WSIC. We're back after this.
More of Sports Director Joe Berg's The Scoreboard.
with Tilly of Statesville.
Talk sports with Joe Berg. Call 844-STUDIO-4. It's the Scoreboard on 105.9, 100.7 WSIC.
All right, final segment. Is it the final segment already on this Monday? Oh my goodness. We're talking NASCAR right now. Austin Cindric, the winner at Worldwide Technology. WWT, Worldwide Technology Raceway, Gateway, St. Louis, all the different things that you call it. Austin Cindric looks like if you saw him walking down the street, you would have no idea that he was a NASCAR driver and you would assume he was like an accountant or something. But he finds himself in victory lane for his second career victory. And Kyle Larson, as of right now, does not have a playoff waiver. Now, NASCAR has been very liberal with giving out playoff waivers here up until this point. They've actually already given one out this season for Eric Jones, who missed a couple of races due to an injury sustained in a crash in the Cup Series. Perfectly fine. I do agree. He should get a waiver for that. He was injured in the car. He didn't do anything. He didn't make a decision to miss a race. He deserves a waiver. Will Kyle Larson be getting a playoff waiver? Yes, I think he will. I think NASCAR might just wait a little bit and continue to get the press out of this. But I think this is the last year that NASCAR should continue just handing out playoff waivers to anybody. We've seen it so many times now. Everybody gets a waiver, and it goes against what you intended for the waiver to be in the first place. The waiver was supposed to make you eligible for the playoffs if you missed a race because you got hurt or, for some other reason you got sick and could not race. What the playoff waiver, in my opinion, was not made for is allowing someone to make the playoffs when they got suspended for their actions behind the wheel. And it was not intended to let somebody make the playoffs if they made the decision to miss a NASCAR Cup Series race. We have seen waivers given out for one of those so far. That being Chase Elliott last year when he was given a waiver after he intentionally wrecked Denny Hamlin at the Coca-Cola 600. He was suspended. NASCAR said, you cannot race this week. And they said, but you can still make the playoffs if you make it. Now, this was after they already gave him a waiver for breaking his leg skiing in the offseason. Two waivers for one guy in 1 year? Now let's go to Kyle Larson. There's so many different opinions with this. In the year 2024, should Kyle Larson be getting a waiver? Yes, he absolutely should. In my opinion, right now, Kyle Larson should get a waiver because the consistency and the precedent that NASCAR has set says, yes, we will give you a waiver even if you miss a race because of something that you did. Kyle Larson, Rick Hendrick, everybody decided on last Sunday for Kyle Larson to stay at Indianapolis, miss the beginning of the Coca-Cola 600, and race in the Indianapolis 500. That was a decision that was made. The opposite decision could have been made, and Kyle Larson could have flown back to Charlotte. Tony Kanaan could have been in the race car for McLaren. He did his veteran warm-up, veteran refresher, I forget what they call it for Formula One, where he ran 30 laps at Indy to get his license back to be eligible to race if needed. So there was a contingency plan there if Kyle Larson could not race because of the rain. It rained. The start of the Indianapolis 500 got pushed back, and they decided to keep Larson at Indy, missing the Coca-Cola 600. He tried to get there. Yeah, we know what happened. It rained at Charlotte, that he was never able to race both cars on the day. And it was real sad. It really was. Now, the argument for Kyle Larson here is twofold. There's two different ways you can look at this. NASCAR has given out waivers to everyone. Why would they all of a sudden say, you know what, Kyle Larson, I'm sorry, you cannot have a waiver. That would be out of nowhere, and it would completely break the precedents they set, right? The other way to look at this is NASCAR saying, okay, Kyle, you brought so much attention to NASCAR this last weekend with running the double over the past month, with how you practiced at Indy, with how you qualified at Indy, coming to race the All-Star race and almost coming back to win that thing. You have brought so much attention to NASCAR in the past few weeks that we are giving you a playoff waiver because it's good for the sport. And you'd be right. It is good for the sport for what Kyle Larson did. But he broke rule number 1 of playoff eligibility. He has not raced in every single race this year. And don't get me wrong, if you're listening to this and think I'm just hating on Kyle Larson, no, I'm really not. I've said he should get a waiver, and I believe he will get a waiver. But after this year, it's time to change the precedent. It's time to make a new way of doing playoff waivers. If you make a decision to miss a race, you are done. I don't care. Look, if this was, I don't know, what 15 years ago at this point, before we had the playoff system, it was the chase by that. 20 years ago, 20 years ago, we wouldn't be talking about this. Kyle Larson would have missed a race, and he would not be in the Winston Cup points playoff anymore. Maybe he'd still be up there because he did have a very good season up until this point, and he's still having a very good season, by the way. If you look at the points under this format, Kyle Larson, second in points. So if there was no playoffs, we wouldn't be talking about this because it'd be points at the end of the year, who has the most. But because NASCAR has concocted this system where it's winning in, you have to race all the races, but there's ways that you can make it if you don't race all the races. This is why we're having this conversation. And I think next year, it should only be, playoff waivers should only be used if a driver gets injured. 2020, Kyle Larson lost his ride for reasons that we're not going to talk about, and Matt Kenseth came in to fill in for the remainder of the season. That was 4 races into the season or so. He was granted playoff waivers in case he made it. Now, he didn't make it. It didn't matter, but he missed the first 4 races. He wasn't even a driver for the first 4 races. Matt Kenseth was completely retired. They gave him a waiver and said, yeah, you know, why not? If you make it, you're in. They got to stop doing things like this. What is the point of a playoff waiver if you're going to give it to everyone? What is the point of the rule being you have to race all 26 races to be in the playoffs, and then you have to race in every playoff race to win the championship? What's the point of that rule if you're just going to allow everybody to make the playoffs no matter what? So I really think it needs to change. Now, and after this year, I agree with the statement that Kyle Larson brought enough attention to the sport this year that he should get a playoff waiver. But that's only because of the way they've been doing waivers. If it's been clear cut, if you miss a race, you're out, then no, I don't care how much attention he brought to the sport. He missed a race. He's out. But they don't do that. And I also think, this is the last thing I'll talk about with this. It's a week ago now, and we're still talking about this because he doesn't have a waiver. At least to the public knowledge, he doesn't. And by that, I mean, I don't think, in my heart of heart, I don't think that Rick Hendrick would have kept Kyle Larson at Indianapolis if he didn't already know that Kyle Larson was going to be granted a playoff waiver. I think NASCAR's just making us sweat it out. And I do think Kyle Larson is going to be granted his playoff waiver. Congratulations, Austin Cindric. You've won a wild race at Worldwide Technology. We got about a minute and a half left, so I'm not going to really be able to get into the last point that I wanted to make on the day as we turn our attention to the NHL. Yeah, the Stanley Cup matchup is set. There is no Game 7 tonight. There should have been, as my New York Rangers fall in Game 6 to the Florida Panthers. And then the Dallas Stars, the second best team in the NHL, lose to the Edmonton Oilers in Game 6. The finals will be the farthest that 2 cities have been apart by miles ever for the Stanley Cup. Edmonton and Florida. That's pretty far away. So it's the longest distance between two Stanley Cup teams ever. Interesting in my eyes. The New York Rangers lost game number 6 on Saturday, and all I have to say is it hurt. It did hurt. Canes fans, I know how you feel. It hurts to lose. It does, especially when you really think it's your year. I really thought this was the Rangers' year, man. I did. But I have never seen a team down 3-2 come out and play with as little heart and as little desperation and as little effort as the New York Rangers did in Game 6 in Florida. One of the worst performances by a team who was on the brink of elimination that I have ever seen. It was gut-wrenching to watch from the start. And maybe you tuned into that game and you said, hey, look, this is a pretty good game right now. The Rangers never had a handle on that game. They were a step slow all game. The second goal with Tarasenko should have never happened. And they're done. Best season ever by the New York Rangers, and they're not even going to fight for a Stanley Cup. It's going to take me a while to get over that one, ladies and gentlemen. It's going to take me a while. That's the scoreboard for today. Tomorrow, we're going to be doing a lot of previewing of the NBA and the NHL Finals, so you're going to want to tune in for that. But thanks, everyone, for tuning in today. We talked a lot of NASCAR and state championship games. I'll see you tomorrow. Until then, have a great night, everyone.